Looks like it worked.
Oh
Sweet.
yeah. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna pop over to YouTube really quick and plugged in on the get this plugged in over on BackerKit.
Sounds good.
We can get into all the goodness with Jared.
Hello, world. Sorry we're a few minutes late here today. Some technical difficulties, but we're here. Uh,
Streaming on YouTube, view on YouTube. Pull over here. Oh yeah, there it is. Look at that. See Jared's lovely face there. Fritz as always. So share. We'll embed this over on BackerKit and then we'll get right into it.
Cool.
And then I also need that. I always need this like streaming ID up here. Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Okay. Regardless of where we're watching, if we're on YouTube, Facebook, BackerKit, we are live now. So thank you for bearing with us as we get things set up. And today we have a very special guest, one of our guest writers. One of the things that Fritz did with Prestige as he was designing and building it out that I think is really, really cool is he invited guests to write for the event cards. We have professional writers who are writing this awesome content. And I thought I would just read Jared's card that he one of the one he contributed here, so that we could just kind of set the tone, and then I'll hand it over to Fritz. Fritz, you can do an introduction for Jared, much more uh, justice than I can before we officially welcome our guest. But here's the card, Lost and Forgotten. It says, the medicinal foragers in search of herbs for their tonics are caught in a sudden storm. As these elders seek shelter in an unknown cave, they awaken the beast sleeping within. Famished, the beast takes advantage of the easy meal. A generation's worth of medicinal knowledge is lost, and health in the city declines. Spooky.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack. That is one of our, they're called lost favor cards. So they happen whenever your city is on the decline in prestige. So I'll give a quick round of introductions. My name is Fritz. I am the designer of Prestige, the city building game, live now on BackerKit. We also have Jack here, who is the publisher and also a game designer of his own. And then, of course, we have the guest of honor, Jared, who is not only one of our guest writers, but is the host of the Ghostlore of Hawaii podcast, which is one of my favorite spooky podcasts. I actually first encountered Jared because I was getting ready for my first time in Hawaii. My in-laws had moved there a little over a year ago, and I like to just listen to podcasts about places that I'm going. So we were getting ready to go and visit them, and I would just like typed in like Hawaii podcast, and the first thing that popped up was Ghost Lore of Hawaii. And I was like, ooh, I
Ooh.
love scary stories. So I think I listened to every single episode of season one in like a single day while I worked. I don't know how effective I was at work, but it was a good day.
That's
Well,
awesome.
thank you. Yeah, thanks for
Fritz,
the support.
Yeah.
Fritz, that's some thorough research. Podcasts on every place you go. Wow.
Well, I don't know about every place, but any like big trip we're going, yeah. Yeah, it's still remained one of my favorite podcasts. I love spooky stories in particular, and I really like the way that Jared hosts it. Like we're all just gathering around a campfire, sharing tales with one another. That was how I got in touch with Jared, and then we just became Instagram buddies. And I reached out when I came up with this concept of the guest writers. So the guest writer program itself is a way to invite new people into the design process. So I've designed the game, but it's really cool to invite other voices, such as Jared's, and we also have, uh, uh, I believe we have up to 5 guest writers now, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So it's just an opportunity for, just as in Prestige, all the tribes are coming together. These are all different voices coming together to tell a different tale that weaves into your game. So, Jared, I'd love for you to give your background with the podcast. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into storytelling?
Yeah, sure. So, Jared, nice to meet you all. Yeah, I started really being a fan of paranormal podcasts, true crime podcasts, um, and I really like that storyteller, like narrator driven type of podcasts, as opposed to like a round table type of interview type podcast. But I saw that, or I was listening to all these different stories and noticed that not a lot of um, podcasts covered Hawaii-based paranormal stories. And if you grew up in Hawaii, everyone knows that like the paranormal is really ingrained in the culture.
Mm.
There's a ton of ghost stories and legends, and it's really well known all throughout the state. And so I wanted to I personally want to hear these stories in podcasts, but I couldn't really find many. So during the pandemic, I just figured, I'll do a couple episodes to, of my favorite stories and personal experiences, and then kind of, see where it goes. And um, yeah, from that first episode, I was surprised with how many people really were also looking for those types of tales, or had no clue that Hawaii was, had a lot of super haunted places. So yeah, it just kind of took off and I found that cool little niche. I didn't really have any s storytelling or even writing background or audio production. So I was just kind of figuring it out as I went. But yeah, it's been a fun ride.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, do you have a favorite story that you've told on your podcast?
Yeah, I have a couple favorites. Any of the ones that I personally went through and experienced,
Hmm.
I kind of I like those because it from the beginning to end of the production, I kind of like going from experiencing the paranormal event to hearing what it sounds like being told, by me actually, by me, but with
Yeah.
the music and sound effects and everything. And um yeah, so any of the stories that I personally dealt with, I like uh I'm more proud of, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, those are always my favorite too. It usually is a fun surprise at the end of the podcast. I've found like you'll like tell this whole story and then you'll reveal at the end, oh, and by the way, it's extra special because this is my story. And it's just like, oh, that's really cool. So I
Yeah.
really like that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice. Do you, Fritz, if you don't mind me jumping in with a question
Yeah, of course.
that just kind of dovetails off of this one, Jared, do you have a most popular story, like one that's generated a lot of community buzz and had a lot of conversation around that sticks out in your mind?
Uh a lot of the well-known, like, if you grow up in Hawaii, there's a few stories or few entities, I should say, that,
Sure.
is really well known. Um like the Morgan's Corner. It's a location that is super haunted, and if you mention Morgan's Corner, uh, you know, I would say 100% of residents there know what you're talking about. So, yeah, I've noticed when I do stories and I cover these popular topics, I get a ton of feedback, and but overall, like, downloads are pretty pretty similar all throughout. So it's which
Consistent.
is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's more of those popular stories that I get a lot of feedback on.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
Uh, as you bring up pod or downloads, there's one thing I've always wanted to ask podcasters, so I'm just going to ask it now. Is there a preference on like where people should listen? And to dovetail off of that as well, where can we find your podcast? But I've always been curious if like it's better for you as a podcaster if like they download directly from their website or Apple Podcasts, Spotify's, like one easier for you to track on versus not? I know that's probably just nitty-gritty details that we don't need to be asking right now, but it just kind of popped into my
You know, Fritz, I should know this. I should know this answer.
head.
Um, uh, as far as where
Mm,
the downloads come from on my end, like I can see where they're coming in from. So Spotify and Apple Podcasts, those are the two where majority of them come in.
Mhm.
I don't think it really matters. I hope it doesn't really matter, but um, yeah, it's you can find me on any of the major platforms. So
that's great to know. I was scared that you'd be like, oh, like I don't get anything out of Spotify, and that's like where I've done all of my listening. So
I,
I'm glad it all
I
counts evenly.
yeah, I always mention the Spotify and Apple Podcasts,
Mhm.
just because those are the two that you can rate and review too.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's like it seems like most common. Like I know for me, I listen exclusively on Spotify as well, but
yeah.
there's some like I have Apple Pod, like I have my like podcast channel on Apple because there's some that are like just there. I'm like I
Oh
have to
yeah.
go there for that. But otherwise, yeah. No, it's interesting.
Yeah, so I know that you mentioned that you this is like you were just dove into this as like your first form of podcasting, and it was kind of new to you. Was there any challenges that you didn't anticipate that kind of popped up as you jumped in?
Um, I'm kind of a perfectionist when it comes to like releasing new episodes, which is why sometimes it takes a while.
Uh,
Um, I'm always re-listening. I'm like, oh, I hate that. I want to change that. And um, so it's early on, it was really getting the audio quality like to the way I wanted it, without any background noise or so it's really just learning audio production.
mm,
Um, because I had no idea about what kind of microphone I should
mhm.
use, and so I just YouTube saved me, and I just went on there and kind of learned the basics, and kind of just went from there.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know if you've also sh had the same experience with audio, but with doing all these live streams, and I've done a lot of recording with the board game stuff. My voice, I just can't get over like listening to myself. It just sounds so weird to have my own voice
Yeah.
play back to me, and it just like unnerves me. So oftentimes I'll have like my wife listen through the first couple of times because I don't want to.
Yeah.
That's how it was for like I would say the first couple months
Mhm.
when I started editing and recording. Like, oh, I just would cringe when I hear my voice, and I'm like, I got to get over it. And so now I don't even think about it, but
Uh-huh.
it was definitely a little learning curve.
Yeah, you've got a great voice for podcasting, by the way.
Oh,
But
thank
I just
you.
know it's different than what we hear in our own heads when it comes out of like a speaker. Uh,
Definitely.
so pivoting a little bit, super excited to have you on the project for Prestige. Can I ask what excited you about the idea for you to actually sign up as one of our guest writers?
It was really the challenge of writing for um kind of like a theme that I wasn't really I've never really done before.
Hmm.
Like so it's really the challenge of it, and um seeing what I could come up with that fit, the cards that you guys were looking for. Um and so I was kind of freaking out like a little bit, but once I started, then the ideas kind of started flowing, and yeah,
Yeah.
and it was a lot of fun.
It's
Yeah, that's
amazing.
awesome.
Isn't it
Go ahead, Jack.
interesting, Jared? Like I do a ton of public speaking. So like for me, like talking long form is like easy. It's surprising. Like it's easy to fill space with words, right?
Yeah.
But like to do something concise, like write a story that fits on a single card is
Hmm.
so difficult. I feel like you did such a good job of like
Yeah.
pulling me into this like, oh wait, what's happening? There's like action beats and like there's like some drama rising in it where you're like, whoa, what is happening here? In just like a few lines of text. But there's really an art to that. It's hard to do it's hard to tell a story with less than with more. Would
Oh yeah.
do you feel that same sort of tension sometimes?
Yeah, you should have seen the cards I first came up with. Like they were paragraphs long, and so it
Yeah.
was like cut this, cut that, cut this, and um, so it's really learning how to pick the right words to convey the mood that I was going for.
Hmm.
But yeah, definitely addition by subtraction.
Mm. Do you feel that with your podcast as well? Because I know like scary stories or like suspense, like it like pacing is a big deal. Like
Oh
how
yeah.
how much do you think about um that sort of thing, like the narrative structure of what you're telling and like
Yeah, that's
do you write it down? Do you go off the cuff? Like what's kind of
yeah.
your process? And yeah.
Yeah, I write down the stories um and then I'll record the whole chunk of it, and then while I'm editing, I kind of, I'm always listening back to it. I'm like, oh, it's taking too long to get to this point, or
Mhm.
it's this part is feels a little rushed or something like that. And so
Mhm.
that, the flow of the stories is always top of mind for me.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and it's funny. I was going through my phone, and when like literally first got my microphone, I was testing it out and reading like the trailer that I had written out for the podcast. And this is before I even did the first episode. And so I was like, oh, I'll record and just to test out the mic. And I recorded it, and I had it in my phone forever. And I just listened back, and it was horrible. Like
Yeah, yeah.
rushing through, the dialogue, and um it's I really had to learn how uh to narrate slower
Hmm.
so I can fit that horror type of theme.
Hmm.
That was the biggest thing for me, was just emphasizing more um about the narration, and then slowing it way down. That was a big thing.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's interesting. Thanks for letting us into your process a little bit. It's always like it's always fun to hear. Like, how'd you get here? From a
Yeah.
creator, like what does it take? And what a lot of people probably don't know is like how much work goes into a
Oh
podcast. Like you
yeah.
mentioned, the back end, all the editing, and here's the front end, like the prep and like do you record multiple takes? Like, does it take you several tries before you're like, okay, yeah, no, it's
Oh yeah.
yeah.
It takes a lot. And um it's always changing. Like I'll record, and while I'm editing, I'm like, oh, that sounded weird, or the way I phrased that sounded weird. And so I'm always changing it, you know, all throughout the editing process.
Mhm.
Um, and then I like to add, and it's something that a lot of the listeners, the feedback, they really like it's like I kind of ad lib in the background.
Hmm.
So like if
That's my
there's
favorite part too.
yeah, so if there's like a Hawaiian word or um phrase, I'll have like a little background voice that defines it while I'm telling the story.
Mm.
I don't know if that makes sense, but it's kind of ad-libbing. Like if you listen to like rap songs and you hear the ad libs in the background, it's kind of similar to that. Um, yeah.
I like
That's
the ones
awesome.
that are more just like a little bit of flavor text or like additional like I always picture it. So I like the idea of your podcast because it's almost like I said, like we're all gathered around a fire, and some of your ad libs are more along the lines of like people gathered with you reacting to the story. Like you'll say something and somebody gets hurt or something in the process, and you'll hear you, but a different voice of you go up and be like, "Ouch" or something like that. So I like it. It adds a lot of character to the storytelling. It's really
Thank
cool.
you. Yeah, that's probably my favorite part, is adding those little ad libs throughout the episode.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. We do have a question from Francisco Ruiz. Um, and I don't know if this is referencing something specific, but he asks, Jared, did you try writing any homages to Hugh Jackman or Christopher Nolan when you were writing events? and specifically speaking to Prestige. Um, is that a reference to Gladiator? Is that what I'm thinking of? No, that's I don't know. Whatever that reference is, let us know. But also, I was going to ask anyways what your inspiration for the different stories was going to be, and I feel like that's all kind of in the same uh,
Same. Yeah,
line.
it's
Yeah.
good.
I no, but I'm a huge fan of Christopher Nolan.
Nice.
But yeah, most of my inspiration came from the other awesome writers that were on board. So I kind of, you know, got the vibe and the mood from the cards that they had written,
Mhm.
and that was kind of my starting point. And then personally thinking like, what interests me or what type of event would um, be kind of a fun curveball to throw in the game. And so it was kind of a mix between that. So the writers and just, I guess, the little creativity I have. Um,
I think there's a
yeah.
lot there, but yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and what's really cool about that is that I think each of the voices of our guest writers come out differently in the different cards that you all have written for us. So even though you've taken inspiration from like PJ, Chris, Dan, or Pete, I think there's a lot of like you in the stories that you've written. I don't know if specifically, like, I don't know you that well, but I like you can definitely hear a different voice when you read your card versus one of the others. And when you're reading them all together in the events of the game, it just feels like it's this one big story all wrapped together.
Yeah.
So what I
Yeah.
really like about yours is like kind of Jack was saying that there's some drama in there, but you also like see the consequences, and it's kind of like this holistic picture versus like a couple of the others leaned more into like telling tales as if it was somebody like directly talking to you, or others might be more of like a slice of history explained to you in a writing. So it comes out really cool when you put them all together. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate all of your effort and all of our guest effort across the board.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I definitely want to add some, some horror type of
Yeah,
aspect to it. So
yeah, the great beast that
yeah.
awoke.
Capitalize too.
All right.
Nice.
Well, I
It's-
know that we committed to half an hour, but I'd love to hear more about what you have down the road, Jared, if you have the time. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
So
great.
yeah, season 3 is coming out. I swear I get like messages every day about it. But
Wow.
yeah, I'm almost done with the first episode of season 3. Um, and that should be out hopefully soon. And then from there, I'll release as it goes on. Um, but yeah, Ghostlore of Hawaii, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, shameless plug.
No, it is not shameless. It's
Yeah.
awesome. I am definitely like I'm driving home from work later today. We're doing this on lunch breaks and
Mhm.
I can't wait to hit that commute and load up Ghost Lore of Hawaii and give it a listen. Like
Thank you. Thank
hear
you.
here's some of what you've been working on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I feel like, a lot of people that don't like paranormal or horror type shows or podcasts, it's I kind of let them know that it's more like PG-13.
Mhm.
It's a little creepy. There's like scary elements because some of these are firsthand stories, but I also try to include, a lot of humor or heartwarming, types of things. Or I did a kind of like a gothic romance type of a story in
Oh, okay.
episode. So
Yeah. That's a good
yeah.
call out because there's like, the horror's on a spectrum from like Scooby-Doo to like ghost stories with kids at camp to like the horror movies we see today, which are like
Mhm.
far like they're like off the spectrum in my mind
Yeah.
sometimes, like where it's like, dude, I don't know. Got to be careful with that stuff. But yeah, where would you say like, if you're on the spectrum, like where like what's a close comparison to like
I would say I'm right in that, like, I would say right in the middle. There I try to definitely, make it creepy, but at the same time, like, like a lot of horror movies, sometimes there's a lot of laughs, all throughout. And so
Yeah.
I'll try to add my corny sense of humor.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would say it's right in the middle. Um, I bleep out all the swearing, and some of my friends, they have like 5, 6 year olds that listen to the podcast, and I'm like, uh, I guess, yeah, I try to leave out all the swearing, so yeah.
Nice. Nice. So it's you're leaning more into that, yeah, like PG-13, like you said. Like that's kind of the
Yeah,
range. Cool.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
I'd
good for our
also give
listeners to
you
know.
a little
Yeah.
bit of a plug in that if you're not into ghosts, I'd still recommend checking out Ghostlore of Hawaii because there is some great episodes on. I think he did one on like a serial killer, just like true crime events. My one of my favorites was the one you recently did on the strange creatures that have been
Oh yeah.
spotted on the different islands. So I'd say there's a little bit of something for everyone, depending on your interest in the paranormal slash cryptozoology slash true crime vein.
Yeah, UFOs too. I talked about
Yeah.
UFOs. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, I try to teach, a lot about Hawaiian history or Hawaiian
Mm,
culture. I try to include a lot of that in my podcast. So, um, yeah, I get a lot of people that are visiting Hawaii, and they're looking up, things where I want to learn more about the islands, and so a lot of my
yeah.
listeners come from that as well.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm excited to start off with that cryptid episode this
Yeah.
afternoon. Ghost Lore Hawaii, Spotify. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
It's awesome.
All
Thanks
right.
for joining us today, Jared.
Thanks
Fritz,
for having
anything
me.
else for us?
Sorry, what was that?
Anything else for us?
No, just check out Ghost Lore of Hawaii, and check out Prestige on Backer Kit right now,
Yeah.
fully live.
Yeah.
And you can
Yeah.
get your own copies of Jared's little stories on cards, and read yourself a bedtime story through our event cards.
Yeah. Even though the events will hurt you in the game, you can be like,
You
"Oh
can
yeah, I
still
remember
enjoy them.
Jared."
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Francisco, thanks for watching. Thanks for everybody on the stream. Thank you, Fritz. And Jared, thank you so much for joining us and for writing for this game.
Thank you. Thanks for having
Yeah.
me.
All right.
Okay.